Okay, so you're one of the most experienced growth leaders that I've had the chance to work with in the space, work with big companies, small companies. Love to understand, JF, like one of the key pain points our customers often struggle with is like knowing what to go after. They're confronted with myriad of choices on where to spend their precious time. Like, what are some of the factors that you consider when making that go no go decision, if that's the way you look at it personally?
Yeah, no, and I think that's thanks for the question, Brian. That's how a lot of people look at it, right? And that's the, $84 million question. Like, how do we align our resources after deals? Because everybody has constrained resources in terms of people, time, effort, energy, and just seeing the forecasts, is helpful. If you can get a hold of the forecasts for an individual, command or agency that you're looking to pursue after. Obviously, you have to align your capabilities and strengths with which will resonate with the clients you have. And the best way to do all of that is obviously to either get to know them or hire people that do know them. And if you don't have I tell my team all the time, if you don't have the client intimacy, it really doesn't matter. You're not going to be very successful. I mean, you might hit 1 in 100 out there just trying to do the scatter shot, but that's really not a recipe for success. So really truly, and I know this, sounds rote, but understanding your client's needs and be able to speak to them. I usually say when we're responding to anything, our name should be on the front page. And then after that, it should really be all about the client, right? So, and I say we don't really lose on price or lose on tech. We may ostensibly lose on those, but we lose on customer intimacy because we didn't understand the client, right? Now, the catch there is the client can be a big organization, right? You're the client in quotes. It's not usually one individual. It's a set of individuals, stakeholders, if you will. And I call it the three legs of the stool. So you'll have the contracting side, you'll have the IT side, and then you'll have the program side. And they can have different opinions, and they often do, right? So you kind of have to, thread the needle through those three and figure out what the best solution is. Because ultimately, you want to give the client what they want and what they need, right? And those two things aren't always, aligned. So talking it through with them way in advance of any sort of RFP or procurement, right? And probably even before an RFI comes out, you want to be in there, engage with them, and know where it's coming. And depending on your size, you mentioned the size of the company, will also sort of dictate, your strategy. Also, if you're a large business, you're not going to be eligible for small business set asides or anything like that, right? So you're taking a much bigger picture. If I was a large company, I'd be looking for where can I really differentiate and box out the competition. So if you're a big ERP company, I'd be looking for the hairiest, biggest ERPs that I could possibly find because there are a very limited number of companies that could pursue that. From a smaller company, I'm going to be looking for niche items on niche contract vehicles. Again, everywhere where you can play your strengths and where the client, right? So that there are no surprises. I tell the team all the time that you can lose before the RFP even comes out, right? And then you spend a ton of money and time and effort and frustration pursuing an opportunity, replying to the RFI, replying to the draft RFP, putting together a proposal, and you lost it before you even started because you're bidding the wrong solution, right? And I've been there, I've done that, learned those lessons the hard way. So, and again, I know it's cliche, but if you don't understand your client's mindset across the board, and you'll probably never have a full understanding of everyone that's making a decision on it, but certainly the major stakeholders knowing their take is critical. So each deal that we look at, and I have no issues with the Shipley process. We use a modified Shipley process. We have gate reviews, mostly for prime opportunities. If we're a sub, generally the prime will handle those and we provide input into it. But if we're a prime, we're going to do gate reviews each step of the way, and things can change rapidly. You can have stakeholders that retire, move on, and new ones come in and they can have a different opinion. So it's a constantly evolving, moving target that you have to stay on top of. And we even had a recent deal that we decided not to prime. We're going to team together on it because they changed the vehicle that frankly that was coming out on, and I didn't like the vehicle and I didn't like the direction it was going in. So you really have to be on it day to day. There's no easy button. There's no easy answer. Constantly evaluating it. I would highly recommend not just taking scatter shots at things. You'll even have KOs and clients. When I say KO, the contracting officers, KO, and the DoD, CO, and Fed Civ reach out and ask you to bid. And at first you think that's great, but until you realize they're looking for competition. So, and I've bid on a couple of those. You think about it. If your client asks you to bid on something, you really think about it. But I've been on a few of those, and there's not a sure thing either, right? So you just have to constantly evaluate, how you're positioned for that, to include price. That's a key component to it. And if we don't bid LPTA, period, right? If it's LP, you know what that is, low price technically acceptable. Yeah, we don't bid on anything LPTA. We're not an LPTA company, and there are a lot of things that are disguised as LPTA. They're not. They say they're best value, but in the end, reading through between the lines, they're LPTA, and generally we won't bid on anything that even looks like that. So we want to be a true value and provide real resources. We don't want to underbid something and not be able to perform on it. So you have to constantly just read and understand what the government is asking for when we're going after it. So long-winded answer, but it's a process. It's a lot of effort to figure out which deals will resonate. You have to understand your company, your capabilities, your strengths, your writers, your technologists, your graphics, everything that you need to put into a bid to make sure that you have what it takes. And then the bandwidth. You can have great people, but if they're working on 2 other proposals and your BD folks are on other things, you may have to take a pass or use some search capacity to go outside and have a trusted, set of resources that you can use for those. So why don't I pause there? I know that was a long answer.
No, that's great. I'd love to just double click a little bit into the client intimacy. Maybe you have an example of, it sounds like that's a primary factor for you. So is that a reason why you would disqualify an opportunity that you would go to the next gate with? Maybe your team brings it to you and we don't have enough intimacy. Or another reason why you would double down is because of intimacy. Maybe there's a story of a deal that you won or lost because of the intimacy level. That would be interesting to hear about.
Yeah, 100%. And the reason that that it is so critical, and that I did say that there are multiple stakeholders, because in the past we've had a single stakeholder that loved us and wanted us, and everything above board, of course, but there were other stakeholders that were involved, and we ended up not getting the award, despite what I call the client. You can even be an incumbent and they want you, but if the contracting officer has something else in mind, they want to bring some fresh blood in, or somebody came in with a slightly lower price that they're trying to make their mark as well, you can lose it. So yeah, especially and we try to go to our strengths, right? So if we have, based on past experience, relationships within certain services, primarily in the DoD, that's where we tend to keep those relationships. And once you get work, then you can better advise them, and they trust you, gain that reputation and that trust and that partnership with them. So then they'll believe you when you say, hey, we need to modernize your IT stack, or we need to modernize these applications, or these applications won't run on your old technology. We're not just some sales person coming in and telling them that, hoping to get a sale. We're legitimately, analyzing their environment and saying, hey, this isn't working. We need to try something different. And if you can get side work going, ancillary parallel work going, I mean, that's gold. That's amazing. That's that trusted partnership that you want with your clients. Other than bidding on, or in addition to just bidding on RFPs that are coming out. Everyone talks about shaping RFPs, and that's a legitimate thing. You want to provide input into the government's process with RFIs and RFPs. But again, if they don't know who you are, why are they going to believe what you're saying or what someone else is saying? They may just think you're pushing whatever whatever you want to push. So if you don't have that trust with the client, it's tough too, because these people move on all the time. But if you're not constantly engaging them, And that doesn't mean just going to conferences and talking with them. I mean, it's giving them white papers, getting on the phone with them, working through their issues, their problems with them, discussing it with them, giving them options, asking them to go out to industry and evaluate other solutions for themselves, right? Just don't trust me, go out and
Hmm.
validate it. But yeah, I think customer intimacy is the number one factor behind anything. I'll caveat that with, if you got great customer intimacy, but if you don't have the technology to do what they're looking for, then that's not going to work either. So it's got to be within your, capabilities and scope. I don't mind stretching if it's, if it's some sort of different application that we don't, that's similar to, something else we're doing. We'll bone up on it. We'll train somebody on it. But if it's completely out of scope, then regardless of the intimacy, I may pass them on to somebody else that I know can do a better job. So
Just gonna get to maybe the last question. I don't want to take that too much more of your time. Like, what what pitfalls have you seen other growth leaders make on kind of those decisions on whether to advance a deal in the pipeline? Maybe there's a specific example that you could share.
yeah, I mean, we make all kinds of mistakes. I certainly make my share of mistakes as well. I'll generalize it at first and then try and give you some specifics. So, and I've done this myself, so I'm speaking from personal experience. So I've had the pendulum like, okay, if I bid, 100 deals, I should win 30 at least, right? 30% win rate, right? That's not always the case because if you don't have that customer intimacy, you may not win any of them, right? Hopefully you're going to win some, but and then I bid too few. I'm like, well, we're going to put all our efforts into 3 deals, right? $300 million deals or $350 million deals or whatever it is. And you put all your effort into it, you do everything right, and you still lose. Then you got a goose egg as well. So finding that right balance is the toughest thing to do. And those are the two kind of biggest mistakes I see. Or just assuming because you're
One mistake is over investing in very few deals that you think you're going to win, right?
correct,
Yeah.
correct, or underinvesting in too many deals, right? So if you're going after too many deals, you just don't have the time, resources, personnel to do that. So then you're not coming across with a compliant, compelling, fact-based, rational proposal, and so you end up not being successful either way. So finding that balance
Mhm.
on where your people are and not getting complacent, that's a huge one, especially if you're an incumbent. It's easy, they call it incumbentitis, and you just have to constantly be reinventing yourself and providing additional value to the customer. And then at some point you have to face it, like after 17 years as an incumbent, the government may want somebody else, and you just have to understand that that's the nature of the business. But then propose something else to them. Say, hey, I know we got to move on from this, but how about this other area where we might be able to benefit you?
Mhm.
And chasing numbers is not a way to do it. You should have goals, of course, but you have to make fact-based decisions based on reality, on your capabilities and your people. So just thinking that this is a good fit, seeing an opportunity, oh, this looks like a great fit, but not doing all the homework that you have to do and going through the whole gate review
Mhm.
process to make sure that you've adequately qualified an opportunity to pursue, and make sure that you can get to the right price, right? There's price is
Mhm.
always a big component to it, despite what the evaluation criteria may say. It's always a key piece to it. So